Hi, everybody. I'm Brandon, and I'd like to share a poem with you today. The poem is called Hymn to Misery, and it comes from my first book, The Long Road Home. Before I do, though, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the significance that Hymn to Misery has come to have for me, because it's an important poem in my life, and it's kind of bled over into my teaching. I often use it with students. I use it in poetry workshops. It's a really special one for me. Um, So when I was writing Hymn to Misery, and for a long time before that, I was in a place where I was really contemplating the presence of suffering in my life. Because suffering is something that we don't want, right? We don't want confusion. We don't want disarray. We don't want pain and anguish in our lives. There's a real feeling of no when it comes to suffering. Uh, and I definitely know that from intimate personal experience. Um, so I was thinking a lot about suffering and began to write about suffering, and I realized that the times in my life when I had transformed the most, the times in my life when I was kind of shed a skin or was reborn from one kind of older version of myself into the next, were absolutely the times when I was suffering the most. They were the most painful times of my life, the most confusing times, and that pattern absolutely continues. I think it's a lifelong process. Uh, so Hymn to Misery then was born as a song to this process, this phoenix type of a process where we burn for a while in our confusion, and we suffer and cry, and then one day when the lesson is learned, we kind of wake up, and we're not suffering anymore, and there's something new on the horizon for us. So I didn't want to write something sad. I didn't want to lament suffering. I had a worldview change as I was writing this poem, from a place of really pushing away suffering to a place of becoming more intimately involved with suffering and embracing suffering. So this poem is called Hymn to Misery. Angels sing the praises of suffering. Their song resounds above the rooftops, throughout the cathedrals, across the hills and valleys to the farthest corners of the kingdom of heaven. Each head turns, both mortal and divine, as seraphs on bent knee take up instruments to accompany their song. All pause in holy reverence to hear the bittersweet strains of agony and its fruit, and by its end, no ear is left untouched by their melody. Sweet misery, cosmic fire, eternal flame, dearest friend, great teacher, perfect lesson learned only by those who suffer. Sacred gem, invaluable treasure, alchemical potion which transforms the heart. Precious suffering calls each human being to become like the phoenix, to be steady, have courage, and dive into the flames. Great rewards await the resurrected. Suffering opens the eyes. Misery burns away selfishness. Agony can make the fool's heart wise. And so it is that this is why God Almighty Himself, wielder of the cosmos, architect of the universe, knower of all, the one whose hand before time eternal created both suffering and joy, smiles so gently when His angels begin their hymn to misery. And so may we all learn to embrace our misery as our teacher. Thank you.